This right here is a plant that has really not been pruned the way that it's supposed to be pruned. You can see it's very leggy, has a lot of airiness in it, not very thick, so not pruned the way it should be. And let's look at a plant that is pruned properly. And this right here is a plant that has actually gone through proper pruning. So you can see it's nice, square shaped. It has a lot of branching and everything else. It has one main big trunk down here at the bottom, and where it branches out from there, and everything's nice and uniform and flattened, and you have this nice, pretty, what we call a table, a plucking table, across the top. This is a plant that has been properly pruned and has had everything done to it correctly. We get a lot of questions about pruning, and pruning is very important in your tea plant if you're trying to form an actual harvestable tea plant anyways. So here's a plant that we have right here. So this particular tea plant, when you first start pruning, when you plant it in the ground, is when you're technically supposed to prune it for the first time. If you're doing pot growing, same kind of concept, just consider it when you plant it in the pot. So we plant it in the ground, and the very first prune for us happens at 7 to 10 inches. We normally do 10 inches because of the pruner that we use. It's just easier for us to do that. So got cut at 10 inches. It is going to be allowed to grow up at least another 5 inches before we ever prune it again. And then we're going to cut that back down 2 to 4 inches above the last prune mark. So if you look on this plant right here, this one is going to be a little bit harder. So down here was the original prune, and it branched up, blah, 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 blah. This one is pruned there again. It's pruned here, and then I haven't pruned this up here. So you see you've got a prune mark here and a prune mark there. And they're roughly a little about 3 inches-ish or so. So within your 2 to 4 inch range. So every time you prune, that's what you're looking for. Let it grow up, and then you're going to cut it back. Let it grow up, then you're going to cut it back. Let it grow up, and then you're going to cut it back. So all you're doing is basically staggering the bush so that it branches out, and it makes a nice, pretty hedge. Now, this one, yes, is a little neglected. It didn't get pruned exactly the way it was supposed to. So you have options when it comes to this. So with that, if you have a plant that you've never pruned and you're wanting to get it back under control, this is what you do. You start by taking your plant and figuring out how many branches you actually have. So you're going to take those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're going to start counting them. So once you know how many branches you have up, I told you 2 to 4 inches. So you're going to figure out at what height are you supposed to have that many shoots. How many times should you have pruned to be at that height? So if it's 26 inches, if it's 30 inches, however tall that is, then you cut it off at that point for the branches that you have. And you start there. It is not ideal, but it is the best and easiest way to get your plant back under control with minimal amount of time with it down. You can always take this back down to its original prune mark if you wanted to. You can bring it back down, cut it off at that 7 to 10 inches, and just start over if you want. That actually happens in tea. It's what's called collar pruning. Every 20 to 30 years, you are supposed to collar prune your tea plants. So you take them back down to their original prune, their 7 to 10 inch mark, and allow them to regenerate. That gets rid of dead wood and all of that in the plant. So the bad mites that build up in tea plants don't have a place to live. They live in the old wood. You want the good mites, which live on the fresh leaf, the fresh bark, all of that. They don't do any damage to the plant. The bad mites are the ones you want to keep away. So getting rid of that dead wood is going to help prevent that. So one thing that you don't want to do is kill your plant, of course. So when you take it way down, you're going to leave a limb or a branch of some sort sticking up. So I'm going to cut this all back down. And I'm going to leave this one branch right here sticking up until I start getting new growth on the other part of the plant. So once that happens, then you can cut this one back and allow the plant to start regenerating. This will allow your plant to continue to photosynthesize and make starches and stuff for the roots while it's putting all of that out. So this will provide your plant with the energy that it needs to reproduce, and once you're done with it and you've got new growth, you clip it off. So back to our spiders. Once I'm done with it, I'm going to get rid of it. But unruly plants are never really something that you have to be scared of. Do not be afraid to prune your plants. They are happy to be pruned. They want you to prune them. It's the only way they can branch out and do what they need to do. If you let them form into trees, that's wonderful as well. They'll be happy as a tree. But if you plan on making tea, a tree is much harder to deal with than a bush. So keeping it in bush form is the best way to go. Pruning is essential. If you miss a prune, that's less tea that you're going to be able to harvest. For each prune, you got to remember, each one of these shoots, when I prune this off right here, it's going to send up 3 new shoots from this spot. When I prune those, they're going to send up 3 new shoots from each one of those. So you are constantly tripling every single shoot that you get when you prune. So that's the importance of pruning, is the difference between having 3 shoots to pick from or 1,600. Another thing about pruning as well and harvesting. So even though you can harvest and not prune. So normally plants that are in harvestability don't get pruned very often. Normally beginning of the year, they get pruned. Sometimes the sides and stuff like that at the end of the year get pruned. So once you actually reach harvesting, there's not as much pruning that happens other than snapping off a branch here or there, or cutting it off, whichever way you choose to do. So pruning is really not that big of a deal once you get into harvestability, unless you're still doing it by hand, because then you're going to get unevenness in your plants and you're going to need to do a constant pruning and plucking at the same time. But machine harvesting, pruning does not happen as often. Pruning your tea plant, how many times do you get to prune your tea plant in a season? And that, once again, one of the famous things that we always say in the tea world is, it depends. And it really does. It's a big thing. So depending on your climate, your soil type, the nutrients that you're feeding them, all of that stuff, how fast they're growing basically. So the answer to that, in all honesty, is as many times as the tea plant will allow you to do it. Your first year of planting, you will prune them when you put them in the ground, and that will probably be it. Your second year, you're probably going to get a couple of prunes, 2, 3 maybe, because they're just starting to grow. In your third year, it would not be anything for you to be able to prune them 4, 5, 6, 7 times, depending on how fast they're growing. And if you're giving them everything that they want and they are happy plants, they are going to grow fast. So as many times as it will let you, just remember there are limits to when you need to stop pruning, which we're talking about in this video as well. So just remember how long you have until your first freeze and all of that stuff, and make sure you prune within that time as often as you can. And depending on your pruning will depend on how long before you can harvest. So like when we prune first thing of the year, we prune in February. So that is when we don't have any chance of a freeze, a hard freeze or anything left. We may still get a frost, but that's not a big deal when it comes to spring prunings. So when we prune for the first time, take them back to 36 inches. That is a very hard prune on the plant. And that's going to take them roughly 45 days to rebound from. So first prune of the year, it's going to take 45 days to rebound from that. If you're just got unevenness during the season and you've got to trim a little bit off the top, those do not take very long to rebound. Some of them rebound just like if you're hand plucking or using a plucking machine like we have. It just takes 7 days for it to rebound. Some, if you get a little bit harsher, but not as harsh as the other one, it can be 2 weeks. So, I mean, it just kind of depends on how hard you cut them back when you pruned and what the purpose of that prune was going to be. So, just depending on how much you take off. So everywhere has a natural thing that tells you what to do. So ours here in Mississippi are the goldenrods. So 6 weeks before we get our first frost, these will go into full bloom. And that's how we know that there's 6 weeks left of our summer before we get our frost. So at 6 weeks, you don't need to be pruning your tea plants. You're going to encourage new growth. It's going to grow. That's going to get killed off with the frost, all of that stuff. So 6 weeks, no longer pruning. Anytime before that is still perfectly fine. But every area has this. So talk to some of your older farmers and everything in your area and ask them what they look for to know when the freeze is coming. They will tell you, and then that's what you're going to look for from then on out. So in your area, find your goldenrod and figure out how long it's going to be for your first frost.